Imagine a land of towering mountains, endless forests, and ancient glaciers. This is Alaska, remote, immense, and mysterious. Separated from the rest of the United States by Canada, Alaska feels like a world apart. It's a land of extremes, long, dark winters and summers where the sun barely sets. For millennia, indigenous peoples have thrived here, perfectly adapted to the land and sea. Alaska's story is shaped by nature, history, and the resilience of those who call it home. By the mid-1800s, Alaska had become a burden for Russia. The fur trade that once made the colony valuable was collapsing, sea otters were nearly extinct, and profits had dried up. Maintaining and defending Alaska was expensive and logistically impossible, especially after Russia's defeat in the Crimean War exposed its military weaknesses. The British Navy loomed as a threat, and Russia feared losing Alaska for nothing in a future conflict. Selling the territory seemed practical. Better to gain money than risk losing it to Britain. There was also strategy. Selling to the United States would strengthen ties with Washington and counterbalance British power in the Pacific. For Tsar Alexander II, the sale was a calculated move. Rid Russia of a liability, gain cash, and frustrate a rival. The decision was logical. Alaska was failing economically, indefensible militarily, and a diplomatic opportunity. Quietly, the Russian government decided to sell. Now, they needed a buyer. Across the Bering Strait, they saw a nation eager to expand, America. The stage was set for one of history's most unusual real estate deals. Alaska was about to change hands, and the world would never be the same. The question was, who would see its true value? In America, one man saw Alaska's potential: Secretary of State William H. Seward. Seward was a visionary expansionist, convinced that America's future lay in reaching across the continent and into the Pacific. He saw Alaska not as a frozen wasteland, but as a strategic gateway to Asia and a treasure trove of resources. Seward imagined American ships using Alaskan ports to access Asian markets and believed the land's forests, fisheries, and minerals held untapped value. He also saw the geopolitical advantage. Acquiring Alaska would hem in British Canada and project American power northward. But Seward's vision was not popular. The nation was weary from civil war and focused on rebuilding. Most politicians and citizens dismissed Alaska as a costly, impractical idea. Yet Seward persisted, playing the long game and preparing to make his case. He would need all his political skill to turn this dream into reality. For Seward, Alaska was more than land. It was America's next frontier. The challenge was convincing the rest of the country. The deal came down to two men, William Seward and Edward de Stuckel, Russia's minister to the U.S. In early 1867, their secret negotiations began in earnest. Stuckel, under orders from the Tsar, found Seward eager to buy. After intense bargaining, they settled on $7.2 million, less than 2 cents an acre, for a territory twice the size of Texas. On the night of March 29, 1867, Stuckel brought word the Tsar had approved the sale. Seward insisted they finalize the treaty immediately. Clerks were roused from bed, and by dawn, the treaty was drafted and signed. The document, in French and English, ceded all Russian territory in North America to the United States. The deal was done, but it was still a secret. Now Seward faced his toughest challenge: convincing a skeptical Senate and a doubtful public. The midnight signing was just the beginning. Alaska's fate now rested in the hands of American lawmakers. Would they see a frozen wasteland or a land of opportunity? The answer would shape the nation's future. The real battle for Alaska was about to begin. Seward's vision was on the line. The clock was ticking. With the treaty signed, Seward needed Senate approval, a daunting task. The Senate was divided and suspicious of President Johnson's administration. Spending millions on a distant wilderness seemed absurd to many. Seward launched a relentless lobbying campaign, enlisting allies like Senator Charles Sumner. Sumner's powerful speech on Alaska's strategic and resource value swayed many senators. On April 9, 1867, the Senate ratified the treaty by a decisive margin. But the House still had to approve the $7.2 million payment. The debate dragged on for over a year, with critics mocking the deal as Seward's folly. Finally, in July 1868, the House approved the funds. The Treasury issued the payment to Russia, and the transfer was complete. Rumors swirled that some of the money greased political wheels, but the deal stood. With a single check, a vast empire changed hands. Alaska was now American, on paper at least. The real test would be what the nation did with it. The American public was baffled and amused by the Alaska Purchase. Newspapers mocked it as Seward's Folly and Seward's Icebox, picturing Uncle Sam shivering among polar bears. Critics called it a wasteful whim, a useless block of ice. Influential voices like Horace Greeley argued the territory was remote, worthless, and indefensible. Cartoons lampooned the deal, fueling the narrative that America had been duped, yet not everyone was against it. On the West Coast, business leaders and editors saw Alaska's strategic and commercial value. They celebrated the acquisition as a bold move for Pacific trade and fishing. Still, the Seward's Folly myth stuck, reflecting post-war exhaustion and skepticism about expansion. For many, America's destiny seemed to end at the Pacific, not stretch into the Arctic. It would take years, and the discovery of riches, before the wisdom of the purchase became clear. Alaska's true worth was still hidden beneath the ice. The nation remained divided, unsure if it had gained a treasure or a frozen liability. Only time would tell. In Russia, the sale of Alaska barely registered with the public. The Tsar's decisions weren't up for debate, and most Russians didn't even know the colony existed. Among officials, the sale was seen as a smart, strategic move, shedding a costly, indefensible outpost. The money, though modest, was welcome for reforms and modernization. Newspapers like Golos called it sensible to divest from a weakness, not a strength. Some nationalists and Russian-American company officials mourned the loss, seeing it as a retreat from imperial ambitions. But their voices were few and had little sway. The logic of the sale, financial and strategic, was too strong to ignore. Only decades later, when gold and oil were discovered, did some Russians regret the low price. In 1867, though, it was viewed as clever statecraft. Russia had solved a problem and frustrated a rival. For the Tsar, it was no folly, just practical geopolitics. Alaska was gone, but Russia's focus was now firmly at home. The world had shifted, quietly and forever. For years after the purchase, Alaska seemed to confirm the critics. It was remote, sparsely populated, and largely ignored. The official transfer in Sitka was quiet. Little changed at first, but everything shifted in the late 1890s with the Klondike and Alaskan gold rushes. Suddenly, tens of thousands flocked north, and Alaska became a land of opportunity. The icebox was now a treasure chest. Gold brought people, investment, and new towns, transforming the territory's economy. In the 20th century, Alaska's true wealth emerged. Vast oil and gas reserves, world-class fisheries, and immense timber and minerals. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline turned the state into an energy powerhouse. During World War II, Alaska's strategic location became vital for defense and projecting power into the Pacific. The Aleutian Islands even saw combat, the only U.S. soil occupied by enemy forces. In the Cold War, Alaska was a front line, bristling with radar and air bases. What was once mocked as folly became a cornerstone of American security and prosperity. Alaska's hidden worth was finally revealed. The gamble had paid off, beyond anyone's wildest dreams. More than 150 years later, the Alaska Purchase stands as a turning point in American history. What was once Seward's Folly is now seen as a masterstroke of vision and strategy. The $7.2 million investment has paid off 1,000 times over in gold, oil, fish, and timber. Alaska expanded the nation by nearly 20% and gave the U.S. a powerful Arctic presence. Today, as climate change opens new shipping lanes and competition for Arctic resources heats up, Alaska's strategic value is greater than ever. It's a vital hub for national defense and a gateway to the future. Seward's foresight proved remarkably prescient. He saw what others could not. The Alaska story is a lesson in long-term thinking and bold leadership. Sometimes, the greatest decisions are those that look foolish at first. Alaska is now an indispensable part of America's fabric, a testament to vision, resilience, and the surprises of history. The land once dismissed as a frozen burden is now a symbol of American opportunity. The purchase changed the map, the economy, and the nation's destiny. In the end, what seemed folly became wisdom. Alaska's story is still being written, its promise as vast as its wild, beautiful land.